Let's unbox the Micro Galaxy Squadron Gold Leaders Y-Wing.
Villa Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it.
Hello there, thanks for visiting Villa Varykino. I'm really excited. As a fan of Micro Galaxy Squadron, I finally got my hands on the Gold Leaders Y-Wing. Here in New Zealand, we got Series 1, 2 and 3, then seemed to skip over 4, and then we got Series 5. We waited and waited, crossed our fingers, but sadly Series 4 never really arrived. So we decided to finally track them down from overseas. We found them in Australia, so the shipping wasn't too bad to here in New Zealand, so they have finally arrived. As well as Gold Leaders Y-Wing here, I also picked up the Vulture droid and the Mandalorian's N1 Starfighter, so I'll be opening those ones up really soon. A little bit of a shame I couldn't find these locally, but still very happy to have them finally in hand. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll open this one up so we can check out all of the cool details and features, but first let's take one last look at the packaging. For Gold Leaders Y-Wing, we have a fairly standard packaging for the Micro Galaxy Squadron line. This is from the Starfighter class. We've got a backing card with some cool art there in behind the Starfighter there. We can see a TIE fighter being attacked in the background there. And we've got a nice big bubble here. Of course, the Y-Wing is larger than it appears. We've got the engines kind of separate from the rest of the Starfighter. We're going to have to attach those in their proper placement once we get it out. I think it's kind of a good way of sort of showing the ship in there, but I think this is a little bit of a shame for fans that like to keep their Micro Galaxy Squadron in their packaging because, of course, the proportions are off here. The engines are too far forward. We've got the Micro Galaxy Squadron logo here in the front on the sort of metallic silver section, and we have the ship name, Gold Leaders Y-Wing, here across the silver, and this is number 0083 in the line. The color stripe down the side is yellow for Series 4. This is my first box with a dual language banner here on the side. All of my other ones that I sourced from New Zealand are just in English that just say the series number down the side. We've got a nice big clear window, a little bit of extra space there because of course the Y-Wing is a little bit more flatter than some other ships, so it does look like there's a little bit of extra space there in the back. Let's take a closer look at the backing card here. We've got sort of a hologram print there of the Y-Wing with its engines fully attached. We can see some of the features. We've got a snap on those engines. We've got the astromech being able to sort of pop up out of the top, which is good to be able to remove it. We've got something that we're going to have to attach here, or they drop down. It's a little bit hard to tell. I'm going to have fun checking that detail out. And it looks like we have movable landing gear as well. If you open yours up, you can also cut out and keep this collectible blueprint, which has two aspects there of Gold Leaders Y-Wing. It's sort of a fun little cut out and keep card if you want to get rid of your packaging. I keep my backing cards intact. I don't cut this one out. Along the bottom here we can see some of the other vehicles from Series 4. This is the Starfighter class, so the ones pictured here are also from the Starfighter class. We have the Mandalorian's N1 Starfighter. We also have a TIE bomber here and two Chase X-Wings. Sadly, because I was not able to find Series 4 locally, I am still on the hunt for these chasers, much harder to find in the secondary market. You can see on my particular one, the sellotape has come away. I know this is a slightly older ship now. It's not brand new, so I'm just attributing that just as the plastics just kind of come undone a little bit there. But of course, I'm going to be opening mine up, so that doesn't matter. It's kind of half started for me. On the underside, we just have a little bit of copyright text and the barcode, nothing too interesting. On the whole, I think it looks pretty good if you like to keep yours packaged, but I prefer to have my Micro Galaxy Squadron out and on display. So let's open this one up. So now I have Gold Leaders Y-Wing in the 3 parts out of the packaging, but first I want to take a quick little look at the included minifigures. I always really like the fact that the Micro Galaxy Squadron line includes little pilot and astromech figures. It always just kind of finishes off the Starfighters quite nicely. The Gold Leader Y-Wing includes 2 minifigures, Jon Vander Vander and an astromech R2-BHD. On the back, we can see that we've got a little insert picture, blueprint style artwork of the figures. Sometimes this is useful as it does depict a little bit more detail than we can generally make out with our own eyes. These are pretty small. So let's pop them out of the tray and take a quick little look at the paint and the articulation, because of course we're going to want to put our little pilot figure inside our Starfighter. So the astromech is pretty featureless. It's a pretty standard astromech. We've gotten quite a few of these across the Micro Galaxy Squadron line by now. This one is a little bit on the plainer side, being pretty much all grey with some silver detailing there. We can see some panels on the front and on the dome. I'm always impressed by the fine detail work of these nonetheless, and all of the astromech details are there in sculpted detail, always quite impressive. The dome does not spin on this little figure. It's a little bit too small, and we have a peg hole on the underside because generally in the astromech ports of ships there is a small peg that these fit onto so they don't sort of rattle around and fly out and lose them. Looking at the Jon Vander figure, we have a fairly standard kind of looking like an X-Wing pilot, but of course this is a Y-Wing pilot. We've got some really cool painted details going on here. Really cool. Bit different, a little bit hard for the camera to pick up on, but the detail here is so fine. The printed detail there on that helmet, we've got a little bit of that sort of split onion there on the top, and then we have a grid on both sides. Absolutely fantastic. And then of course we've got yellow on that lens, a grey chest box, and we've generally got some white strapping on the rest of the flight suit, black gloves and black boots. Absolutely fantastic. The heads don't turn, but generally speaking the arms and the legs are articulated. This one's a little bit stiff on the arms. If I can get him to get his arms up, because of course we do need to get him, there we go, and he should move like that so we can get him into a cockpit pilot position so that we can get him seated in the cockpit very shortly. So there we go with the two figures there. Just going to put the packaging out of the way because of course it's now time to check out this Y-Wing. As you can see, it is packaged in the three components. We've got the main sort of body of the ship, and then we've got the two ion engines that were packaged separately. Some of the larger vehicles in the Micro Galaxy Squadron line are kind of packaged disassembled. A little bit of a shame because of course if you want to keep yours packaged they do look a little bit odd. It does save a little bit of space, I guess, but one of the reasons why I personally like to open mine up. So let's go about attaching these pieces. We've got these sort of really sort of angled pieces here. I'm hoping this isn't going to be too tricky. There have been a ship or two in the line that I have added to my collection that has been quite tricky to put together. Some of these attachment points can be very, very hard to kind of snap together, and it does make me worried about, you know, always breaking a few pieces. So we've got this sort of insert slot, which is angled down, which you can see will match into this attachment point, which is also angled down. Part of me kind of just wants to go over some of the detail here while I don't have the engines on, because I think they're going to be a little bit in the way, because of course they are quite large. I absolutely love the weathering on this line. We've got a lot of sculpted detail. Because I wasn't able to spot this one in the store, I don't know if the weathering on this one is heavy or pretty much standard for the Y-Wing in general. We can see that we've got an almost black color weathering on the pale grey sort of engine part here. Much less here on the main cockpit part, where we've got sort of that much paler watery wash. We've got a very heavy black wash over the rest of the engine details, which really does highlight all of the fantastic details there. And without the engines attached, I can really see all of that fine detail. Absolutely fantastic. A little bit heavier over on this side. We can kind of see it sort of pooling a little bit on this attachment point, but of course that's going to be inserted into the engine. We won't see that very shortly. On the underside, again, pretty even. We've got a little bit sort of heavier down here, but it is fairly balanced. It doesn't look like we've sort of got a big splodge and it's looking ugly. Pretty balanced. Absolutely fantastic level of detail here. Love the Y-Wing. I can't believe I finally have this one in my hand. I've been wanting this one ever since it was announced. I still am so sad that Series 4 never made it here to New Zealand. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Really cool to see all of that weathering up close. So let's go about attaching these engines on, and I'm really hoping this is not going to be too tricky. So we can see here we've got the landing gear, so I'm going to make sure that the landing gear is facing down, and then we've got that angled attachment point here. Okay, so it's definitely going to take a little bit just to make sure that these are aligned, because I really don't want to snap anything off, but I can kind of get that inserted there. And hopefully, does it want to click, or is it just kind of going to slide in there? Some of them really snap into place, and I feel like this one might be one of those snap into place ones. It's kind of on. Didn't click, but it does feel secure. I'm not going to wrestle with that one too much. I feel like that one is about as tight on as I can go. Okay, I've got that side on, and we can do this side. You can kind of see a little bit better from this side, the angle pointing down. And see if I can get this one on. You can see the sort of the insert grooves here match up to the detail there. When I get it close, you can kind of see where that detail is going to line up. Oh, this is definitely stiff to click in there. I don't really want to sort of press these two together, but I feel like I have to. I was kind of hoping it would click. Then you really know that something's on and attached. I don't know if that's like fully on. I feel like it's pressing against it. I feel like that might be on. I guess if they pop off unexpectedly, then I know I haven't clicked them on as much, but I was kind of expecting them to like snap. Some of the other starships I've put together, they kind of make a really loud, very definitive, you've attached a piece noise. But yeah, this one feels like it went on. It just kind of slowly gripped on. Okay, that's always a relief. I'm always a little bit worried that something's going to snap, but yeah. Fantastic. You can really see the dark wash looks kind of different now that we've got the engines. We've got the sort of subtle wash on the engines and the cockpit. Very, very cool. Okay, let's have a look at some of the engine detail. We've got a little bit more of a wash on this engine than on this one, particularly on the top surface. We've got a little bit of sort of a drop here, which is catching my eye a little bit, and we've got a little bit of a spray over here, a little bit of a wash over here, a little bit cleaner on the top of this engine. But of course, weathering shouldn't be identical. It is, you know, weathering, not paintwork. I really like the accents that we have in here, where it sort of fades and gets darker towards the end, and then we have that, I want to say it's like a dark orange or a red. It's a little bit harder to tell. Definitely sort of a fiery color in there, but I really like the way that it kind of fades to that darker color in there. Fantastic. And we've got a little bit of weathering here at the end. Looks a little bit more even here in terms of the weathering. Not too dirty, not too clean, kind of balance there, which is what we're really looking for. And overall, I'm liking just the overall proportions, the colors and everything, of course. This is a gold leaders Y-wing, so we're going to have a very specific paint job. We've got bright yellow and this kind of muted blue here on the front of the engines and on the cockpit as well. And of course, the weathering goes over that paint job. We've got sort of like a weathering to the yellow where it looks kind of chipped and scratched, as most of the Rebellion ships do. It's not a sort of a design flaw of this particular ship. It is, of course, because most of the Rebellion ships are weathered. So we've got some fantastic weathering there. We can really see that there on the front of the yellow. And we've got a blue stripe running down the sides there as well. And of course, we've got lots of features to go over this. We've got some landing gear. We've got some... I don't know if this, oh, yep, this will turn. These are the top ion cannons. I was kind of hoping, because of this clear attachment point, that meant that was going to be able to be pivoted around. So we've got a little bit of angling there. These ones, the laser cannons at the front, they feel fixed in place. I don't believe those can move. I don't think they were indicating that they could move on the packaging. On the underside, we've got some missiles or bombs under here. Definitely going to look at those. And of course, we've got some landing gear. So it looks like we've got 3 landing gear, one under the cockpit here, and then one on each of the engines. So I'm hoping, because we've got a little bit of a thumb tab here, that these aren't going to be too hard. Okay, and I just grip those and we can click those into place nicely. I do like it when these aren't too hard to remove. Some of the ships can be quite stiff. Okay, oh, that one clicked into place. And now we can put it into a fully assembled and landed pose, because of course this particular ship and most of them from the Micro Galaxy Squadron line don't come with flight stands or display stands. We generally have them posed in a landed or ground-based position. So of course, if I'm going to put this one on my display shelf, I'm going to need those landing gear, unless you're going to sort of get adventurous with fishing line or a third-party display stand, which you could put those landing gear away and have it sort of suspended in some manner. Definitely want to experiment with some of those for some of my other ships, but for this one I'm perfectly fine with having the landing gear down. So of course we've got a cockpit here as well. Like the other ships in the line, most of them have a clear cockpit. Of course we've got the little figures to put inside them, and it looks like this one is going to hinge from the side, so hopefully, yep, nice and easy. I didn't even need to sort of get my fingernail in there to open it. And that one pivots open. You can see from the inside it is made out of clear plastic with that painted surface, and then of course we've got that swivel weaponry on the top there. So inside we've got a little bit of paint job. I like the fact that we've got some details in here. Most of the paint and detail is this kind of engine metallic detail here in the back that is painted over the top. We can see that the weathering goes pretty much all the way up to the edge of it, but I don't see a lot of weathering on the inside, which would make sense. We're not going to get sort of external as sort of space weathering on the inside of the cockpit, because that's going to be closed during combat, of course. So let's get our little minifigure in there. So of course I've got him in his seated position. We've got kind of little handles here in the cockpit, so I'm hoping that he's going to sit in there. I'm just going to hook his feet in there, so we can kind of get him holding. That looks really cool. And of course, something about the Rebel pilots with their bright orange flight suits means that we can see them a little bit more clearly once we close the cockpit. You can definitely see that there is a figure inside. A little bit hard to see, of course. It's not big windows. Some of the Rebellion ships, we've got very clear windows. We can see the figures in there, but I can see that there is a figure now in the cockpit, and that orange does help us see him a little bit better. And of course, behind the cockpit, we have the astromech port. You can see in there we have a small peg. I like that the weathering is kind of all the way in there, so we don't have this sort of stark, clean gap there. There's quite a deep astromech port. We've even got what looks like little pegs for the astromech feet to kind of rest on, because that's a very deep port, and we've got that peg in the middle. So let's get our astromech in there. He's got that little peg hole that's going to fit in there, and he's going to sit in there nicely. Of course, that peg means that he's generally not going to fall out, but on the underside we've got this panel pushes in, which means that it will lift the astromech up, and I can pop him out, which means he's not going to get stuck in there, which is always useful. So if I pop him in there, I'm going to push that panel back up, which is a really useful way of getting them out. The grey is a little bit subdued for an astromech, but of course Micro Galaxy Squadron line by Jazware is going to have to create the most accurate astromechs to pair up with the particular starships. So of course it was not their fault that it's not a vibrant red or anything like that. Not every astromech is going to be brightly coloured. I think he looks pretty cute in there, and it certainly does complete the starship, especially for starships where the astromechs are sort of very, very central. You know, we think of like X-Wings and that, where we've got them. It just doesn't look quite the same with this sort of gap there. It definitely has to complete the look with an astromech there. So I think that is all of the components assembled. Looking pretty cool. I've just got those underside missiles to check out. It was a little bit unclear on the packaging. I don't think there's anything to sort of pop them out. I wonder if they're just going to kind of hook out. If I just kind of, can I just pull them out? It's even kind of just a little bit hard just to get in there. Okay, so I can just pull them out. It's kind of just an interesting play feature. I feel like these are so small. I'm going to worry about losing them, but we've got sort of painted and sculpted sort of like a weaponry bay underneath there. It's really dark, but there's a little bit of sculpting underneath there. They do look cool in place. I'm hoping that's not too loose. They do just kind of sit in there. I think there's kind of like an interesting, fun little detail because, of course, Y-wings can be used as bombers, so you can sort of drop them. There isn't like any kind of button, so you can sort of like actually drop them or fire them in any way, but that is like an interesting little feature added in there on the underside. It's always kind of funny sometimes when I think about the play features of Micro Galaxy Squadron. They don't fire missiles in quite the same way, but of course they are sold in the toy aisle, so they do have a few features like that. Kind of a fun little bonus. I'm not sure that that's going to be a deal breaker or anything too exciting for most collectors. It's completely hidden when this is on display, but I think that's just like a fun little extra detail there. Of course, we can see the sort of copyright stamping right under the nose. I kind of wish it was a bit hidden back here, but I guess this is one of the most flattest sections of the underside. I guess it does make sense to put the printing there. You'd have to sort of cut it in to all of this fantastic detail. And I just love how much detail there is on the underside of these ships. Once we've got them on display, we're generally not looking at the underside, but there's just, oh, so much detail there and just fantastic. So happy to have this one in my collection. Such an iconic original trilogy era ship. It's just, oh, fantastic. So sad that I couldn't find more of these, because this one, along with some of those original trilogy ships like Snow Speeders, the B-Wing and stuff like that, the A-Wing, I kind of want multiples of them, and who knows, maybe I will have to track down another one of these from overseas, because I think, you know, some of those ships just look really cool in sort of like a squadron formation, and this one just looks fantastic. Oh, so happy to finally have this one. I really like the paintwork. There is a little bit of variance with the weathering from the Micro Galaxy Squadron line, I find, from ship to ship. If I do have the opportunity to spot them in local stores, I kind of see as best I can through the packaging, because sometimes the weathering can be a little bit kind of splodgy, where it's heavy in some patches. It kind of looks like droplets. It kind of, the proportions of the weathering throws off. I'm not upset with the weathering on this one. We've got that one drop here, but it's not a deal breaker for me. Generally speaking, of course, the sort of hero pieces around the cockpit, where it's really going to stand out, I kind of like the evenness of the weathering that we have here. And overall, the heavy weathering here is nicely done. We can see that now that we've got the engines clipped on, that darker section over here looks fairly balanced. We've got sort of just the right amount of variance there in terms of dark and lighter patches. And on the underside, a little bit darker on the underside, which you would expect. Very, very cool. Oh, really happy with this one. It's been a while since I've been able to open up a new Micro Galaxy Squadron starship for my collection. I'm definitely going to have to track a few more down from overseas. It does mean that the cost ends up being a little bit higher, but I really do like this line. Of course, I know a lot of fans have their quibbles about distributions and the chases and some of those frustrations for collectors, but when you do get them in your hands, it is always a delight. Really happy with this one. An iconic original trilogy vehicle that I have been waiting quite a while to finally add to my collection. Really happy with this one. It all clicked together. I was a little bit worried that something would sort of snap, but it actually went together easier than I thought. I was kind of expecting that sort of loud click noise, but it went together. It feels sturdy. I like the way that it looks when it's mounted on its landing gear. Of course, it is a little bit of a lower ship, but that is, of course, the design. Might experiment with one of those awesome sort of flight stands that some fans are creating. Definitely think this one looks perhaps a little bit cooler in sort of a raised flight mode, but yeah, that's for another time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another cool Star Wars starship and had a lot of fun checking out all of its amazing details. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again really soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Micro Galaxy Squadron fan, I've also unboxed the B-Wing Starfighter. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Micro Galaxy Squadron unboxing playlist. This is the way.